Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Investing in Nashville show. Today we are getting to sit down with none other than Evan Holladay. Now, Evan and I got connected through a mutual friend, and so I was excited to sit down. And we talk about a lot of things. He has also got a podcast called the Monumental podcast, which you definitely need to check out. But one of the incredible things about Evan is, even at a young age, he has been able to grow his portfolio substantially. And it's been interesting, and it was interesting just sit down and dive deep of how everything in his past, from studying abroad and what that looked like, brought him to where he is. He really focuses on that affordable housing market. And if there's anybody knows how to do that space, he does. And he has a ton of wisdom. Again, we got to sit down over a glass of bourbon and just talk about who he is, where he's going. And without further ado, enjoy the episode.
But your audience is more than just Nashville. You're kind of going all over the place, right?
Yeah.
That's, ours is the investing in Nashville. So at this point, we're just really targeting on Nashville. So I'm really trying to debate, how hard do we push YouTube at this point?
Yeah.
As opposed to, we just kind of, I don't know. Because YouTube is, a lot of your viewership is going to be all over the place. You know, how beneficial is that going to be for us? But I don't know. Yeah, you ought to follow it.
You probably get at least a decent amount of people. Just because Nashville is becoming a global city, right?
Yeah. To me, that's the intention, because when you say investing in Nashville, you don't have to guess what it is. And again, it can be limiting. It's not like there are the bigger pockets that it's so open-ended.
Right.
That it can mean anything. And not to say that we don't rebrand the podcast in the future, but right now it's we want to build connections in and around Nashville. We want to know who are the players in Nashville, who are developers, who are the, because we want to get there. And ultimately, I believe that by growing that, we're going to grow even outside of that.
Yeah.
But even if I'm talking to somebody from Atlanta, and you say, hey, we have the Investing in Nashville podcast we host. We eventually having the Investing in Nashville meetups. To me, it just feels like it could open up a door for us to be a player in the space.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. That's the philosophy anyway.
Is this pour your own?
Pour your own, man. Pour your own. Everybody. The Four Roses is not as hot, dude. I was with Tyler, man, and I had that one, and boy, I wouldn't expect. I was right in the middle of the interview, and boy, I popped up. Oh man, I just cracked open the bottle.
That's awesome. Yeah, honestly, I love the concept because it's very specific. Investing real estate in Nashville. It doesn't even need to be real estate, actually. Just investing
in Nashville.
And it's gonna open you up to a lot of new people. I've definitely taken advantage of that. I need to take more advantage of it in Nashville, though.
Yeah.
But I've been able to meet, if you know Mark Deutschman.
No, I don't.
Jimmy Granberry.
So I would going to the referrals, dude. I'd like to know who do I need to reach out to?
Yeah.
Because it's just I think and it's amazing to me how many people you reach out to, and they're like, absolutely, I'll be on. As opposed now you have something to offer. Hey, we'll come in here, we'll promote you, we'll get your brand out there, we'll get your podcast, whatever it is, and boom, now you just have that opportunity. So anyway, so we like to sit here, drink bourbon. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
So, dude, all right. So I'm doing some research, and dude, you've done a lot of stuff, man. So you are the CEO and president of Holladay Ventures, right?
Yep.
Dude, you built a $225 million portfolio, 1,300 units. Dude, that's at 29. That's impressive, man. I'm not gonna lie, that is impressive. So, all right. So take me back. How'd you end up in Nashville?
Yeah, good question. It really, for me, it happened about 6 years ago. So I was in college. It really goes back all the way to college, really. So I went to University of Louisville, and it started there where I was in pre-med. I was going to, science and chemistry. I was like, this sucks.
Really?
This is not me. I don't know what I'm doing.
So you're going to be a doctor?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to be like an anesthesiologist.
I guess you look like a doctor. You can be a doctor. I mean,
but I just don't know how to do anything. But yeah, so I went down that route, and I was like, man, I need something else. Mm-hmm. I saw this development on campus. It was a $55 million development. Student housing, retail on the first floor, tax credits. It was a crazy development. I was like that screams my name. I want to be a part of that. How do I get involved in that? And I just reached out to the developer, figured out a way to impress him, and really just got a job from the very beginning. Learned everything I could. Got really intricately involved in a lot of the decisions he was making about that development, and I was hooked after that.
So okay, wait. Before we go on from that, okay, to me, I'm always fascinated how there are people who talk about making things happen, and there are people that actually make it happen. So you went in there, you found a developer. This is what I want to be in. So what did you do to find a way to impress a developer in college?
Yeah, so I was trying to figure out a way to get a job because I knew I could learn so much being in the same room as this guy. Mm-hmm. And he told me he's like, all right, well, I'm not going to just hire you, but I will give you an opportunity to bring people out to the groundbreaking. Mm-hmm. And so he had this groundbreaking, and it was supposed to be a big deal. And so he's like, bring people out, and we'll talk. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up getting some buddies to pass out flyers. There was free pizza. Like, basically just tried to make it so, the cards were literally stacked to my table, or stacked toward me. And basically, I think we got like a few hundred people out to this groundbreaking. And so that that started the relationship where he's like, all right, well, this guy can bring value. He can add value where, this guy was an out-of-town developer. He didn't know the market as much. He wasn't as in tune with the student body, where I was a student. Those were my people,
Right.
Like,
now, was that his market? Was he going after the student body?
Yep.
Okay.
It was all student housing. It was literally right on campus at University of Louisville. So that was a huge value add for him. And so after that, he's like, all right, we'll give this guy a shot.
That's awesome. So, okay. So you get through college. I was doing some research. And at one point, it feels like it's after this, did you start a company in college, a modular business, correct?
Yep.
So how did that come about at what, 23, 24 years old?
Yeah, I think it was like 20.
20?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
What's funny is like, it sounds crazy, but really it started out for our class. So we had this entrepreneurship program at University of Louisville, and the class was designed to say, okay, just start a business on paper. And so that's really what it started out as. It was like, hey, I'm passionate about real estate. I'm going to make it happen in real estate. I was already working for the developer. And so myself and 4 other people, we basically banded together, found somebody else that had already put together this plan for the modular and had actually built out the plans for buildings. And we said, okay, well, it was students and professors at University of Kentucky. Mm-hmm. We said, hey, you guys have the plans. You guys have done a lot of the work. Can we actually take that and commercialize it and actually make it into a business?
So they had just...
It was a class for them.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. So they weren't doing anything with it. And we're like, well, we'd love to actually like build this, take it to the next level and actually make something happen out of it. And they said, sure, yeah, that'd be great. And so we built some single family modular buildings, and we actually used the same layout, the same buildings, the same workers that built houseboats in Kentucky. So we basically repurposed that because they laid off like 1,100 skilled workers. Wow. So we were like, how can we put those same people back to work, use the same factories, and make it more energy efficient and quicker to market? So we can literally just, package it up and send it off to site and just plop it on there. And then you have your first floor, then your second floor, then your third floor. And so we wanted to scale that to multifamily. And that's really where like the next phase for me came in. I had a group, we were looking for partners, and I approached this group, and they're fast growing developer based in Louisville and working quite a bit throughout the region. And they're like, well, how about you work with us? Let's partner together. Let's work together on deals. And so I really got to cut my teeth with them. the partners at that business had, probably combined 100 years experience in development, in real estate. So that to me, I was like, man, like where else am I going to get this opportunity? And I'm getting paid to learn from these guys. Like you can't get much better than that. So I just learned the development business. I learned the multifamily business. I learned tax credits. I learned affordable. And then from there, eventually broke off and started my own business.
So whatever happened to the modular business? Did it ever get off the ground? I mean, where's it at?
No, really. Once I left, it kind of
it just dissolved.
Yeah, it dissolved after that. I was leading the charge, and so I think honestly though, we'll have to incorporate that into our business at some point, because I think the way the price of construction and everything, that all the constraints that we're dealing with on the construction side, if we can do anything to get more efficient with our costs and our time, because your time to market, if you think about it, the sooner you can start leasing up units or selling units, the quicker you can actually realize a profit. So that I think is going to come back around, and we're going to figure out a way to make that be a part of the Holladay Ventures business plan.
So you think that modular space is there, and do you see it in a multifamily aspect? Is that what you think? I mean, is that kind of like multi-modular as in mobile home style, or do you? Because I have a friend of mine, he owns a modular home business. That's what they do, is they build. How do you see that? I mean, of course you don't know yet, but how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, it's different than modular homes. It's going to be basically like you will not know the difference between that and a stick-built, like a normal framed out multifamily building. You will not know the difference once it's all put together.
Right.
So the goal is really just to take the components of a building and just put it together more quickly offsite, and then like Legos, just stack them on top of each other.
Yeah.
So it's going to be the same as the multifamily developments we're already doing, hopefully just saving some cost and some time.
Yeah. It was fascinating to me. So I was going back. One of the, I feel like the consistent themes I was looking and finding in research was, okay, at one point you're in Prague, right? Studying in Prague. Tell me if I'm wrong, but post-economic development beyond Soviet Union, right?
Yep.
And so you're doing this, and then you move into this space to where you keep talking about efficiency and sustainability. In college, like sustainable government, you talk about, whenever you were at the University of Louisville, and then next thing you know, you are kind of going into multifamily and affordable housing. So it's kind of like, I feel like there's this theme that can't be by coincidence. So where did that come from? This desire, like affordable housing and all of this. Where do you think that started?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, honestly, I was like, you know what? I want to actually be doing something more than just pushing the rents as high as I possibly can push it. Yeah. There's a difference between just building luxury housing that, they could find anywhere across the city. They could afford anywhere across the city.
Right.
It's a difference between providing that or providing for a family where they can't find this quality housing, and they can't find this opportunity, and they can't find a good foundation for their home and their family and their kids, where they can actually provide a better life and a safer life for those kids. So that, I think, learning that process, that was actually part of the modular business. That was part of our business plan. We were like, well, how can we provide like a mix of incomes, affordable all the way up to, luxury market rate. Like, we want to serve everybody. And so that, my understanding of affordable housing, what it meant and why it's needed, and the impact it has, that, like, learning that, I was like, holy crap. I gotta actually put what I know to work for good, for impact.
Because is there a challenge? I mean, you tend to walk into. I mean, to go back, I guess I applaud you on one, but because typically when you think of real estate development, you often think about maximizing profits at all costs. So to intentionally go into affordable housing, you don't see very much. So is there a conflict that you find? I mean, whether it's socioeconomics, just having the affordable housing with the luxury housing all in this one, or do you kind of segment that out? How do you create that to last long term, if that makes sense? Is that even that much of a challenge?
To create the affordable housing long term?
Well, the affordable housing, like you're talking about having a mix, having luxury and affordable housing kind of all in the same unit, which, I mean, with Nashville being so diverse anyway, so it may not even cause an issue. I just wondered if you've ran into any obstacles kind of blending the two, the luxury market and the affordable housing market together.
Yeah, I don't... Honestly, I would say that 9 times out of 10, there really isn't an issue there, and it actually brings a better sense of community because you're bringing those that, are maybe artists getting started in a community. That's kind of the goal, like, of MDHA, right? Like, their goal is basically saying, like, 25%, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's basically like 25%, like, permanent supportive housing, like, can't even work.
Right. And
they need all the help they can get. And then 50% at 60% area median income. So that's like 30 to 60,000, and then 25% market. So that's exactly what they're doing. So I would say there's groups out there that are doing it. That's not 100% of what we do. We do some kind of balance per project, but it's anywhere from, we do 60% AMI projects. We do mixed income projects with 80% in market rate. But really the goal is to create better long-term sustainable communities, so that way we can we can all just live better and create a better place to live long-term for many generations.
Yeah. Now the way that I understand too, Holladay Ventures, you only do multifamily, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of been your kind of niche from day one. And so that kind of started back in college. Is that correct? When you...
Yeah.
What made you just specifically get into multifamily?
That's a good question. I think for me, it had to do with my mentors, like the mentor I first worked for in college. The modular company, I just realized that, one, we can have a bigger impact the more units we do, the more affordable units we do. And two, there's better economies of scale, especially in rentals.
Yeah.
There's way better economies of scale when you can have, one site that's the costs of development for that site and that foundation is spread out over 200 units instead of 20 or 1 or whatever it is. Like, it just makes your numbers work a whole lot better. And it also gives you better bang for your buck as far as impact.
Right. So multifamily, we kind of mentioned this earlier. Or I'd say earlier. We met other night at the meetup you guys had put on. In multifamily, because I'm very fascinated in multifamily. My dad's side of the family all owned apartments and the whole 9 yards. So that is something that I grew up in construction, but that's really where I want to move into. But multifamily is a very competitive market. What do you think has helped you break through? I mean, especially like we're in multifamily in Nashville specific. I know you go everywhere, but Nashville specific, everybody wants to get into multifamily. Yeah. What do you think has helped you break into that market?
For me, I think it had to do with mentors.
Okay.
And aligning myself with those mentors, and then on top of that, I would say just doing what I say I'm going to do, right? Like, I think you see that time and again where, people are talking a big game and don't really always have the follow through.
Yeah.
And I think that's what can separate you. It's as simple as just following through on what you say you're going to do and treating people with respect. And then also just building constant rapport and relationships with brokers.
Right.
I mean, the majority of the land deals for development and the multifamily deals for acquisition have probably 90% of them have come from brokers. So it's building that relationship, and then that's taking them out to lunch, going to coffee, like catching a Preds game, like whatever it is, like building that relationship, meeting them at a meetup.
Yeah.
So that way you guys get to know each other better. You like each other. They want to work with you. They want to do a deal with you.
Yeah.
I've had brokers tell me, they're like, hey, we haven't done a deal yet, but I want to figure out a way we can do a deal. Like, that's a great feeling when brokers are telling you, I want to do deals with you.
Yeah.
And so I think that should be the goal for anybody wanting to get into multifamily in Nashville. Is like, especially like you said, it's very competitive. Nashville's hot. Like, you have money coming in from all over the world, literally buying multifamily here. So it's about finding ways to build that relationship, build that rapport, because that's what separates, like, getting the full, email blast, like, where they send it out to 20,000 people and you're one of 20,000 people, or the deals that maybe, the off markets where the seller doesn't want to make a big deal of it. They don't want a bunch of commotion at their property, but the broker knows you can close. And so they bring it to you first.
Yeah. Because we were talking about the other day, I mean, to go into one of our deals and go into it as little as much as you want. You talked about a deal that you did in the Nations, which is fascinating, which you were able to go in, buy a pretty good deal for this. So tell me about that. And then where is that kind of that, because you was able to buy that one off the market, correct?
Yep.
Now have you closed? You've closed on that one, so I don't want to talk about anything.
Yeah.
That's gonna take that away. So walk me through that deal for a second. That how it kind of come to be.
Yeah. So that, like we said, like we just talked about, that's a great example of a broker bringing a deal to me and saying, hey, I want to do this deal. I don't have the bandwidth or the manpower to be able to do it on my own. Let's partner.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing too. Partnering never hurts if it's the right partner. And so that was a case where he had the lead. He knew the owner. The owner has multiple other properties around town, but wanted to sell this one. Didn't want to rehab it. Knew that there was upside potential, but wanted to find somebody else to sell it to take advantage of that. So we ended up buying it for $895. But we did a seller credit for $100,000, and that was actually we were able to use that as part of our down payment, our 20% equity in the deal. So I think we both brought, I think it was $45,000 to the table.
Man. And
then we covered the construction costs. We gutted these 10 units, and we put 25 a door into these things.
Yeah.
And we had a very, very good construction crew. Guy that just brought in like 10 guys and just did the whole thing in a couple weeks, or a unit in a couple weeks, I should say. But going in there, rehabbing them, I think we'd pro forma'd like $900 per month for the rent, and we ended up getting like $1,100 to $1,200 a unit.
That's crazy.
Because it's in the Nations, because it's on Charlotte Pike, it's right next to L&L Marketplace. Like, it's a phenomenal location.
Yeah. And
we also put a decent amount of money into these units, made them look brand new.
Yeah.
Worked on the exterior, painted the exterior, put a lot of time and effort into this. But at the end of the day, like, we'll be able to realize pretty quickly the upside on this deal, because we're literally going to refinance it.
Right.
Basically a BRRRR strategy for multifamily. So we'll refinance, realize the upside value, and pull the
that
equity
money out, and then
roll it into the next deal. Exactly.
See, that's what's fascinating to me, is being able to go, like you said, go into those value adds, and really it's just a matter of, and which is something that we've talked about that is really on our radar for 2020, is developing those relationships, because those best deals, like you said, by the time it hits the MLS, everybody knows it, everybody sees it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're not going to break into the market by hitting it that way. One of the things that's also fascinating me is mindset, because you deal with a lot of, how many meetups do you put on, and people talk about getting into real estate, and they want to get into real estate, or at least they say they want to get into real estate, and how many people never actually get into real estate? What do you think? What separates a good investor from a great investor?
Oh, that's a good question. A good investor versus a great investor. I would say a great investor, it comes down to doing whatever it takes. I think, if you boil it down to one sentence, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to being able to realize literally sometimes you just need to pull yourself outside of a situation and almost have this like second sense or second pair of eyes about anything that you're dealing with, and also not losing your cool, because there's a lot of times where people are going to try to screw you over, or you're going to be in uncomfortable situations and people are going to piss you off, and you just have to roll with that and just keep going and stay level-headed. And I think that goes back to like just pulling yourself out of a situation and saying like, hey, I'm bigger than this. I'm going to get through this.
Yeah.
This is a stepping stone. This is a learning stone.
Yeah.
Like, this is me, adding a notch to my tool belt of saying like, hey, now I know how to deal with this next time.
Yeah.
And I think having that combined with like doing whatever it takes.
Yeah.
There's many other things that add to that, but I think that's the core of it.
I remember, I sell real estate. That's what I do. I'm a broker. But something that always used to fascinate me with just people that was in there, they would let deals fall apart. They would lose a $15,000 to $20,000 commission check over a $500 home warranty. Yeah. Right. I mean, it was just like, it would blow my mind. People would throw a fit. And I remember just thinking like, just make the deal happen. Right. Yeah. Like whatever it, like you said, whatever it takes. I remember, I've remembered distinctively hanging drywall at clients' house to make it qualify for FHA, because I'm like, this deal is going to happen. Yeah. This deal is going to be done. It's going to make it happen. And sometimes you just got to do it. Sometimes you just got to get in there. And I think, and tell me what you think about this, but I feel like too many times we fear failure, right? We feel like, okay, I've got to get all my ducks in a row before I get into it. And I mean, I'm guilty of that too, because I do mostly residential flips, right? Single family flip homes. And I think one of the things that's kept me from getting into these bigger deals is just fear. Like, and really it's the same deal. It's just got more zeros attached, right? Yeah. It's just, Ryan Stackhouse, good buddy of mine, he said, buying a $3 million commercial property is the same amount of work as flipping a single family. Yeah. But I think there's this mental barrier that we have that makes it feel like it's so unattainable. It's so, you look at somebody doing got a $225 million portfolio thinking I'll never get there. It's the same. Yeah. It's just on a different level.
Yeah, exactly. And I was literally having this conversation about an hour ago with somebody, talking about how 100% it's better to just get started and not know everything than to wait until you know everything and then get started. Yeah. Because you lose the deal, you lose the contact, you lose the introduction, you lose out on so much opportunity. And I think, that's crippled me in the past. Yeah. I think that crippled probably everybody in the past. But it's recognizing and being aware of that and then saying, all right, that's not going to happen again. Next time I'm going to take action. Yeah. I don't need to know everything. I need to just know that things will fall into place. Yeah.
So for somebody that is trying to break in, let's just say they're trying to because that's kind of your bread and butter. You're multifamily. For somebody that is afraid, or somebody that's really thinking like, I want to get into it, what are the first? I think you've talked about some of those, especially building those connections. What are the first 3 steps they need to take to really get themselves in the game?
Find a mentor, practice, go out, look for deals, underwrite deals, talk to brokers, and take action.
So you brought mentor up a lot. So what did you do to find a mentor?
It depends at which stage. I think the biggest thing is I looked for mentors. I think at the beginning I didn't even realize what I was doing, but when I looked for that first developer, on campus, that was a mentor, and that's what I craved and desired because I knew that I wanted what he had. Yeah. And same thing with the guys I worked with, the development company. Like, I wanted what they had. Like, I wanted to get to that level. And right. I knew beyond a doubt that if I was going to do it on my own, it would take way longer.
Yeah.
And I would struggle a lot more, and I would make a lot more mistakes and a lot more failures. And I've even had some of my mentors say, like, man, I wish I was in your shoes learning from me, because I didn't have someone like me when I was your age, and I failed a lot.
Yeah.
And so that also kind of confirmed what I was thinking. I was like, yeah, like I literally have the opportunity, and I tell everybody, like, find a mentor, because the opportunities you can get, the learning, the networking, the introductions, the just like time saved, because you don't have to deal with all the same crap that they already dealt with.
Yeah.
It's just that beyond anything else, I think that's what can propel people if they find the right mentors.
Yeah. I mean, you find somebody that, like you said, you know, that's one of the reasons why we're launching this podcast. We talked about it before time, but like, to me, it's funny where I've always said, you know, 1,000 doors, and now I'm getting around people that are giving me slack because I'm not thinking big enough, right? And then to me, I'm sorry, well, maybe it's 10,000 doors, maybe it's 100. I mean, because your goal is what, 100,000 doors, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's a huge, incredible goal, and I mean, I think it forces you to step out of, like, this is how I'm thinking about it now. Like, how you're thinking about it now, probably even for you, like, how you're thinking about it now is going to be different than when you have, you know, 50,000 doors, right?
Yeah.
It's just this evolution of, like, how we're growing, how we're learning. Like, I'm at this point where I do flips. I don't have any buy and holds, which now I'm getting into that process. You know, you've got to stretch yourself and get yourself to that next level. So anyway, I think that's it's always been fascinating to me. So you do a lot of syndication, right?
Yep.
So what have you learned about what's the hardest part of syndicating a deal? Is it the money? Is it the connections? What have you found? What have you learned in putting those bigger deals together?
The biggest thing is having a good deal. It's not as much about the money. I think the money comes once you have a good deal. It sells itself, right? Like if you comparing apples to apples deals, and you have one that's smoking hot and sexy, and everybody's going to gravitate towards that one.
Yeah.
So I think that is hands down. That's fundamentally, like, that's how you can better raise capital and do syndications, is just have good deals. So it starts on the underwriting side. It starts on the finding the deal side and negotiating with the seller on the front end.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I think it comes down to building a base of investors. It comes down to building rapport with investors, the same way you build rapport with, you know, your brokers that we talked about earlier. Like, without a good base of investors, or at least a good base of relationships that you can trust, and they feel like they can trust you, then it will be harder to raise money.
Right.
But I think we all have, you know, especially if you're already in real estate or you're getting into real estate, like you have a base of friends and family that you can always get started with. And then you can start meeting people through social media or Bigger Pockets or some other platform. Like, figure out ways to get in front of people like we're doing right here, and use that as an opportunity to say, hey, you know, I work with high net worth individuals just like yourself, and you know, we have multiple deals coming at us all the time, and I'd love to talk to you about the opportunities we have coming up.
Yeah.
You know, just like, boom, just say like, hey, I have opportunities. I want to help people like you who have money that's just sitting there earning 8%. I want to give you way more than that. So that's how you get the conversation started. Then having the coffee, having the lunch, having the phone call, and then preparing them, because that's the other thing too. You kind of want to like prime the capital raising machine before you actually do that first deal. Right. So you want to let people know, be like, hey, I'm looking at deals and I don't have a deal right now, but once I do, this is what it will look like, and show them an example. Put together an example and say, hey, this is what it will look like. Yeah. And that makes your life way easier, because then they're like, oh yeah. Like, once you do have a real deal, then they'll be like, all right, well, you know, Alan's already told me this is what it's looked like, and I'm all in.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think it's also too. This goes back, and I feel like this is a consistent theme. Like from the beginning, where you saw what you wanted, you saw the mentor and the developer, and you're like, I'm going to provide value first, right? And so in the real estate world, it kills me where I see agents where literally all they talk about all the time is, hey, you want to buy or sell, call me. And to me, I look at that and I think, why in the hell would I want to call you, right?
Yeah.
Like, what value have you brought to my life? And I think it's huge. Sitting down and stopping and saying, how can I bring value to this person first?
Yeah.
We always want to take value first. Instead, if we can learn to give it, like you said, hey, pouring into other people, how can I help you get to that next level? And then turning around, then you're there, when it actually comes time to make that deal.
Right.
But anyway, so what do you think? This is a hard thing for a lot of people to answer, but what do you think that you do really, really well that gives you that competitive advantage? Here's what I'm saying. I have a friend of mine. He is a master networker. But when you ask him, like, hey, what is it, when you bring that up to him, he's like, that's not a big deal. To him, it's hard for him to identify the things that we're good at. But what do you think that you do well that nobody else has?
That's a good question. I love that. I would say it boils down to I genuinely care. And I think I think most everybody has like that radar of like, hey, this person actually cares about me and about our community and about what we're doing, or cares about me as an investor. I think that's the biggest thing. And then the other one is I always am thinking about the big vision. Like I'm always thinking about the 100,000 units, the multiple different Holladay companies that we're going to have, the amount of people we're going to serve, we're going to have a global impact. Like I'm always thinking about that. Yeah. So I never let that out of my mind. And I've, people will say, they always wonder like, well, how do you think about that? I'm like, cause I need to, like, that's what keeps me going every day. Like that's what pushes me. I think and that's what pushes me to like work harder and work faster and find mentors and connect with people and do podcasts. Like it's because it's part of the greater mission and the greater purpose of like, we're trying to go big and we have to be planting seeds now in order to make that happen.
It's 20 years. Where's Holladay Ventures in 20 years? If you can wave your hands and it's where you want it to be, how do you see it?
It's hitting that 100,000 units number, which is very ambitious, but I was like, we gotta. Well,
you're
shoot.
already at 1,300. You're at a good start.
Yeah.
All right. So 100,000 units. Do you see this as a global brand?
Yeah, honestly, 20 years, we're gonna be all over the country. I think globally too. I think the biggest thing is we're going to be not only developers and builders and owners, but we're also going to be advocates for affordable housing. Yeah. Because affordable housing gets a bad rap, wherever you go. They're like, oh, I don't want affordable housing. That's Section 8. It's like, no, that's not what it is. Like, let's help educate people and show them like, hey, these are people making $35,000 to $75,000 and working a job and, working as a policeman, a fireman. Like, these are all people that could live in affordable housing. So I think that to me, like, I want to get to a point where, like, I've done some speaking on affordable, but I really want to take that up a notch and say, hey, like, guys, this is important. Let's change this and figure out a way where we can actually provide opportunities for these families to at least not have to worry about housing. Yeah. And one less thing to worry about. And then that way their kids can actually like grow up in a nice place so they can live a better life and provide for their parents or whatever it is. Like that's what gets me going is like, it's not just a company, but we're trying to make it a movement of like, hey, let's make a massive monumental impact on affordable housing in not only the U.S. but in other countries. Like, figure out a way we can solve or at least help in other countries.
All right, so talking about Monumental, talk about your podcast for a minute.
Yeah.
So what are you doing? Got to listen to a few episodes, which is awesome. So tell me about the podcast. What are you doing there?
Yeah, so Monumental, it's really interviewing those that are making massive, massive monumental change in the world. And it really came out of like kind of what we talked about is like I want to have a big impact, and I also want to learn from those that are having a big impact in the world. And I also see real estate and multifamily investing as a vehicle to allow for the not only the finances but also the impact and being able to fuel that impact. So Monumental is basically our way of sharing these guest stories and then also like creating a community of like-minded people that are all trying to make massive impact and use multifamily investing as a vehicle to make that happen.
So who has been your favorite guest and why?
Favorite guest?
I mean, maybe it's like your favorite kid. Maybe you can't do it. So let me let you off the hook a little bit. What has been one of your most enjoyable podcasts that you've recorded?
Yeah, well, they're all honestly. I've had so many enjoyable ones. They've been a blast. That's what I love about podcasting is like you literally meet some really cool people.
Yeah.
And you get to like vibe and connect with them in 45 minutes to an hour, and you literally get deeper than you would on any other type of conversation that you have with this person.
Yeah.
But I would say honestly, one of the cooler conversations, and also I think maybe their studio had to do with it, but interviewing Elena Cardone in her studio in the Cardone studio, that was really
pretty
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty it just like took my mind to another level. You know, it's like putting yourself on the outer reaches of where you're comfortable. I mean, that to me stretched my limit because I was like, whoa, we're in a studio, we have like 5 cameras looking at us, and we got like the TVs behind us.
So you was in the Cardone like studio. What does he do? The Cardone zone or something? Maybe.
Yeah.
So
like
is that where it was?
Yeah.
So what was the big takeaway you took from that conversation? You think?
With Elena, the biggest thing was that I think for power couples, like in order for you to really, really dominate, it takes your other half, your better half, you know, your partner. It takes your partner support and you all supporting each other to really take it to that next level. And so she was just talking about how her and Grant really made a decision. Like it was 2008, the market was crashing, and she basically said, she's like, I made a decision to forego my acting career because we needed to double down on his career. But really she was also talking about how she was the idea person behind a lot of his big ideas. And so it's become that like they've been able to work together and create that like 1 + 1 = 10.
Yeah.
Like the whole 10x thing. Like it's real. Like they work together so seamlessly. Like they are a team conquering the world.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, for myself and my fiance, it really opened, because she was there helping me. And so it was great. We got that experience together because I think that also opened our eyes to how can we more work together, because we do work really well together.
Yeah.
And we had that ability, so let's take full advantage of that and let's support each other. So I think that was by far definitely big takeaway.
That's awesome. So all right, how do they find it? It's kind of, we're wrapping up. Where do you see Nashville moving? It's one of the questions I always like to ask people. And if we had a magic wand, we'd be a lot richer if we could see into the future. But where do you see Nashville moving over the next half decade to a decade?
I would say I think you're going to see a lot like Austin. It's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to get tech jobs or even jobs from like the Northeast. Like getting Alliance Bernstein, like that's freaking crazy to me. Like that's mind blowing because it's like a tech investing company moving to, little Tennessee, and moving away from Wall Street. So I think because Nashville's such a fun place to be, I've never met somebody in the 2 years I've lived here. I tell people I'm from Nashville. And they're like, oh man, I love Nashville. Like, oh yeah, I want to get back there. Oh, I want to move there. It's like,
Isn't that fascinating though?
It is.
I was at an event in Miami back in January. Gary Vaynerchuk had put one on, and so we went to this kind of like this VIP kind of dinner, or not dinner, but what do you want to call it, cocktails and all this stuff. And you would say, "Hey, how's it going? You know, good. Where are you from?" And literally, people, it didn't matter if they were from Saskatchewan or if they were from LA, you would say, "Hey, I'm out of Nashville," and they were like, "Oh, Nashville! I love Nashville." And it's amazing to me, like this, where the overall presence and how Nashville is being looked at a global scale. You know, as just not only just the United States and how that's becoming a very central piece of the United States, but globally. It's becoming a destination spot. Yeah. It's fascinating me.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I think that's going to have like a ripple effect on, it already has had a ripple effect, but it like, if Nashville just can continue to figure out the growth piece and the development piece, and continuing to incentivize good development, and allow for good development. Because that's the other thing too, is like, I think a lot of times neighborhoods can't see that as a city, we need to adapt, we need to grow, we need to develop. And so they put up a big red X for any new development. And that can be tough, and that can drive up prices, which then goes back to affordability. Yeah. And that's honestly, I've met a lot of people that are like moving out from LA because they're like, LA is just unaffordable. Yeah. Well, guess what? Like, if we don't fix that in Nashville, if we aren't like preemptive about it and stop it now, or at least like put in the units now, then in 10 years from now, we're going to be just like that and be overcrowded. And
so in Mount Juliet, where I live, you know, I've noticed it's already becoming, they've got new regulations coming in and the whole 9 yards, to where pretty much they don't want anything built under $400,000 at least. You know, most are 500 and above, it feels like, that are getting, you know. But we just landed in Mount Juliet, the Amazon, you know, distribution center. That will be Amazon's biggest distribution center in the world. But I'm like, so it's happening. I mean, like, Amazon's coming. You got all these big, you know, logistics companies coming in. Yeah. And I think as long as we can, like you said, develop the right way, move, you know, continue to grow in the right way. I mean, the more diverse the economy becomes, not that we're ever completely shielded, but the more we're going to be protected from the 2008s that come. So anyway, so man, it's been a blast. So if somebody want to find you, they want to reach out to you, how do they do it?
So biggest way is the Monumental podcast or Instagram. That's where we connected. Yeah. But I love Instagram. Very active on there. And then also our website, evanholladay.com. And then if they're interested in investing, it's holladayventures.com.
Awesome, man. Dude, well, thanks for the thanks for sharing some bourbon. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.